led by Attorney Scott Smith out of Columbus, and he has a couple attorneys out of New York City, Debbie and Alan, and then there's a public justice out of Washington, D.C., and an attorney, Adele, is helping the Scott Smith group. So public justice is involved trying to help that group as well. So those are the main groups, and then there's a couple one-offs. The settling group is a Wright Schulte, which is out of Dayton, Ohio, and they have some attorneys in Cleveland. Those guys, I think, now have another 10 to 15 guys, even though they settled, but they have another 10 or 15 that have stepped forward and came in. So there's over, 250 guys still in this thing out of over 400.
Okay, so I lost count. It's a huge number of young men that were put through hell. And also, too, when I read your complaints you sent over to me, many of these young men were molested multiple times, some of them 30 times. Yeah.
So what you have is the dynamic here is we're talking Dr. Strauss is the treating physician, and Dr. Strauss obviously is doing all these things, but he is basically getting clearance by the university, and multiple complaints were made, and usually you would make them to training staff because that's who we were constantly around is our trainers, which were obviously medical staff, but trainers and student trainers. That were, the student trainer is there to be a trainer, so they're learning, so they're constantly around you. In wrestling, we had 2 or 3 constantly student trainers, who then you report to the head trainer at Larkins. So we're always reporting stuff to them, but they're always telling us, hey, this is totally legit exams, this is fine, it's normal, he's a very good doctor, he's thorough. He was also like an Olympic doctor for Olympic sports like wrestling. He was the wrestling Olympic doctor, so he worked for USA Wrestling. All of us knew that. So he was very reputable, and we're being told the whole time that, that these are legit exams. Even when you complain or you'd be mad or, highly mad, upset, you would go to them and they'd say, hey, that's Dr. Strauss. He's good, or he's just being thorough. He's just making sure you're able to compete. So when you have like 30 times, it's because he was our treating physician. So anything where you're trying to get medication or a severe injury, he's looking at you. Sometimes even the trainer would say, hey, this is what I think it is, but you need to see the doc for confirmation. So we're always getting directed right to the man. And that's how you can get so many times with the same doctor.
So you got about 400 victims, right? And they all have to pass through this doctor. But now the average person that sees the headline of this story and doesn't really delve into it and hasn't read the complaint the way I have, thinks this story is, well, they, 1 or 2 students every now and then would go over to the doctor's office and he would manipulate their genitals and then he would leave. But it was much more systematic than that, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think the report... So when they did an investigation, when this comes out in 2019, they then make their complaints. Now they then get Ohio State refers it and gets I think they refers it to the Attorney General, who then says, hey, we need to investigate this. And then a firm by Perkins Coie comes out and they investigate it. They get a prosecutor that's highly reputable. A former prosecutor, highly reputable U.S. district attorney that was out of Chicago. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Well, they come out with their report a year later after reviewing over 500 people, or approximately 500 people. They also had 2 doctors that they used as experts that looked at all this, and they came out and said at least 177 athletes have been abused, but we believe the totals are around 1,500, or give or take. Male athletes have been abused from 1979 to 96, 97. So they're saying that that's kind of the number, and it could get as high as 3,000 is what they came out. Now, when that comes out making that finding, immediately the university, through President Drake and the Board of Trustees Chairman Gasser, issue an apology letter that basically says, there's a bunch of wrongdoing here, and it's a systematic failure of the university not to protect its students and its student athletes. So it was definitely a systematic thing, because the doctor is going, not only like we had talked about before, he's not only treating us, but he's going to the student health center. So some of these guys are being treated. I represent currently three guys. One of them was a student trainer. He wasn't an athlete. And then two guys were student employees. They were university students given jobs in athletic. One of them worked in St. John's arena, and the other one worked in Larkins Hall as an equipment manager, student equipment manager. They were working, paying their way through school, and went, and because they were athletic guys working with the athletic department, were sent to Dr. Strauss for exams where he was trying to masturbate them. So this was definitely systematic. Our yearly physicals had to be done by this man, and to get clearance. If you had an injury as a wrestler, you had to go to him, or he wouldn't clear you to compete at the events. And every time that you went to him, he would basically tell you, hey, I need to do a full, thorough exam, or I'm not going to clear you. So your choice is let him do a full exam, or you don't wrestle this weekend, or you don't compete, or you don't do anything. So it was definitely systematic.
And also, too, some of these exams took place at his personal residence.
Oh, yeah. He would have guys. Doc Strauss was he was like a quirky kind of guy, but he was very open and wanted to belong. So he would always be coming up to guys saying, hey, how you doing? He was always giving us his card. If you had an injury, he'd give you a card and say, if you need anything, call me, even if it's at my residence. And at the time, looking back, that's kind of crazy, and most guys didn't take advantage of that. Some guys did. Most guys didn't. But the training staff at Ohio State, him being ultimately on top, but I would have student trainers come in at 6 in the morning if I needed to rehab my ankle. I almost thought I broke it, had a high ankle sprain. They would come in almost any time, like, hey, I can work you around your class schedule or practice schedule, because during the times of practice or around them, they're super busy taping all kinds of athletes and looking at things. So they would set you up times to rehabilitate you on different times. So they were very open to that. Different times, or I'll come in later, or come in early to help you. Now, Strauss went above and beyond that, and he would even ask guys to come to his house. So I have at least 3 individuals, probably more, now that I'm thinking about 4 or 5 probably, that went to his house where he was trying to manipulate and masturbate guys at his house.
And besides this activity under the pretext of a physical doctor's examination, he would also invite them to dinner and lunch. And
oh, yeah. That was constant. He would, try to say, I had one guy, I laughed at his story when he told me, because at the beginning of every year, the NCAA has a ton of rules about not taking extra benefits. So we'd have to attend these meetings. And when I say meetings, I'm talking like 8 hours of meetings. So you're in these meetings talking about what you can and can't do as an amateur athlete on benefits from, let's say, donors, if they try to approach you and try to get you to take money, or an agent, how you're to get out of that situation. I had one individual I represent, Doc kept trying to ask him out to dinner, and he would say, Doc, that's an extra benefit by the NCAA, I can't take it. So he tried to get out of it by trying to throw the compliance rules on the doctor, and the doc said, those don't apply to me, because I'm the team doctor, so I can, obviously take you out for the steak dinner. Some guys I represent took him up on that. I mean, anywhere from, and sometimes it wouldn't be, when we talk dinner, sometimes he would be asking you to a very nice place. Other times it'd just be like, hey, you want to go grab a bite at Wendy's. Looking back now, he was trying to make friends and be a part of it so he could, like any manipulator or any person that you see in a sexual assault case, and you have a very extensive criminal background, I mean, he's trying to be your friend. Yeah. He's trying to groom you, is the correct word that you're using there, is grooming you so he can then do certain things to you.
And you also have evidence of him calling the dorms to...
Oh, yeah. There was several houses He would call dorms, but there was several houses. There was 2 or 3 places we would consider wrestling houses, meaning everybody in there that lives in that place, that's let's say a 6-bedroom place, everybody in there is a wrestler. So there was about 2 or 3 places. And now this is back when, obviously, we had the caller IDs. They were in white boxes, right. And it would come up Richard H. Strauss, and it would have his number. And he was calling that place, that facility, all the time, the house there, all the time. And he was looking for basically a couple of the guys that everybody knew that was kind of Doc's favorites. So a couple guys got it, I think, worse than the rest of us, but, you know, he dished out the manipulation and the sexual abuse pretty evenly, but a couple guys, I think, submitted a lot easier. So he would constantly call for those individuals.
And also, too, he would offer to help the young men with their modeling careers.
Oh, yeah. That was a constant. Doc was always, he had a hobby, I guess you would call it, and he would tell you, hey, I got a hobby of photography. Why don't you let me, after an exam, I mean, this is stuff he's saying to you during exams, oh, you have a nice physique, and can we take some pictures, because that's a hobby of mine. Obviously, I'm a doctor, it's the human body, but it's a hobby of mine, and I've had people sign on to modeling careers. Now, one of our teammates, that is not my client, but one of our teammates got a big-time modeling career. I don't know, I think Doc had some stuff to do with it, but did get a big-time modeling career, and everybody knows about it on the team. So he would use that to try to get you to take pictures and for him. And these would be very provocative, you know, take your shirt off, you know, kind of in your skimpies. Sometimes, hey, totally nude, because that's what they want type pictures. He would also show up to facilities and practice facilities with his camera and just start shooting guys. Like as you're like naked weighing in, he's got a camera just shooting things. As you're preparing for practice, you know, I got a hockey guy that was half dressed, putting on his skates like he's got his bottom half on, and Doc's over there shooting pictures and telling him what great pictures he got of him. And then, hey, once I get these developed, I'll give you copies of these.
But he actually had trouble getting them developed, didn't he? He actually had trouble getting them developed because they started turning them down.
Exactly. His pictures were so provocative. The place he took his film would exit and say, hey, we're not producing these films, man. This is not right, you know.
We're going to have to take
these are
we're going to have to take a commercial break, but just to get the gist of this, we're talking about close to 3,000 young men that were affected by this negatively. Many coaches and staff were aware of this. The neighborhood knew that this was a place to go for this kind of activity and go to the stairwells and loiter around the bathroom and stuff like that. Is there any possible way that people didn't know what was going on?
You mean the people that were there?
Yeah,
in the facility.
Is it possible that anybody didn't know what was going on? Even a wrestler, that this wasn't common knowledge?
Impossible.
It'd
be impossible. It was a daily thing in Arkansas for wrestling. Daily.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible.
And if people read this complaint, and by the way, can I put that complaint up online?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's public record. I mean, it's a federal filing.
Yeah, if people read this complaint, man, you're going to be shocked. There's so much more in this. There's no way we can even cover everything that's in the complaint. We're here today with Attorney Rocky Ratliff, and we're talking about the Ohio State University sex abuse scandal. These young men, just imagine these poor kids. They leave home for the first time, 18 years old, and they're subjected to this crazy doctor, you know, and then as the years go by, school's not helping us, nobody's helping us, nobody's listening to us. One case, Rocky, I read that the coaches threatened the guys. Says, hey, if you guys don't shape up, I'm going to send you over to the doctor.
Yeah, there was I believe it was the tennis coach or one of the coaches, I think it was tennis, that basically, hey, you guys aren't like working hard enough. However, if you're going to keep slacking, I'm going to send you over to Doc Strauss. So he was using it as a punishment incentive for his athletes to start working harder in practice.
So here we have a situation where there's open sexual activity going on in the locker rooms and the showers. He's taking kids back to his personal